Hi everybody and welcome to another UTS Startups Confessions. My name is Victoria from UTS Startups, and every week on the busiest street corner in Sydney here at UTS Startups, we interview somebody from our community to share their journey and hear all about the secrets to their entrepreneurial success. For this week, please join me in welcoming Juliette O'Brien from OnlyFacts.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking to me, Juliette, today.
Thank you for saying I'm going to share secrets of success.
We'll see. I'll see what I can get out of you. So just to begin with, Juliette, can you tell me a little bit about your startup?
Yes, so it is OnlyFacts, not to be confused with OnlyFans. And we reveal only the truth, nothing else, the naked truth. So I would like to acknowledge that I have my wonderful developer, Luis Rojas Bonilla here, who is a polyglot and speaks multiple languages for computers and humans.
Wow.
So thank you for coming, Luis. And also my co-founder, Anthony McCarley, aka Migsy, is hopefully watching the live stream from Melbourne. So we are a data provider and a data communicator. And we specialize in public interest data. So by that I mean environmental, economic, social, and political data. We make that data more accessible, and in doing that, we aim to raise the collective IQ of Australia. We specialize in data that's sort of tricky to get, and it's tricky either intentionally or unintentionally by the people who collect it. So it's often fragmented, messy, incomplete. Maybe we are inundated with it. Maybe it's hidden, right? And we can also deal with big data and so on as well. So the idea is to make all of that more accessible to the Australian public. That's our key premise. So I like to say that we are a fact tank, not a think tank. We are Australia's first fact tank. But that idea of a fact tank, where you are giving access to facts to bring everyone onto the same page, that works at a community level for Australia, but it can also work within smaller communities and smaller organisations.
Amazing, that sounds fascinating. I can't wait to dive into all of that. But just to kick off, can you tell me a little bit about who you were before the startup?
Yes, I was once asked to give a talk at a meetup on circuitous career paths, and I was like, that is something I can talk about. My background is journalism. I actually studied journalism here at UTS 20 years ago, and then I did law, and I worked as a lawyer for about 1 minute, but I still have the HECS debt to show for it. So I've really been in digital journalism for my career. And that has been over a time when, first of all, online, I was in SMH Online when online was like the ugly duckling of the newsroom. You know, you're a bit embarrassed. You'd say, I work for SMH Online, you know. But now, like, online is the place to be, obviously. But through that time, the media was going through multiple revolutions. So the internet was introduced before I started working, but really during my career we had first the internet, then we had the move to social, and then mobile. And each of these times there was a huge sort of issue in the newsroom and for news media in how to grapple with the fragmenting audience and the changing audience behaviours. So I've always worked in that sort of sphere, and now we're obviously on the cusp of the next revolution, which is AI, right? So basically, you know, the immediate history before OnlyFacts was that I was working for SMH in 2020, and there was this unknown virus in China, and I was producing news stories in the breaking news desk. And there was one particular story where I wanted a chart and data in the story to show where the cases were across each state and territory. And at that point in time, like, they were just issuing press releases, And they would say, oh, there are 12 COVID cases today, and they come from here, here, and here. So anyway, long story short is the data didn't exist, the charts didn't exist, so I started to track it manually in a Google Doc sheet for the SMH newsroom. Johns Hopkins was already doing it for the USA, but we didn't have Australian data. Long story short is the SMH could not support that in an ongoing way because it was highly manual and prone to errors unless someone was on it 18 hours a day, right? So I took it independent, and then it went viral over the first weekend of March or the second weekend of March, and like 250,000 people came to my little Wix website and had a look at that data, right? So then I made the fateful decision of putting a donate button on and people donated. Amazing. People are incredible, right? And that locked me in for the next 2 years.
Oh, great.
And so really the attitude that I took was that the public, the Australian public, were funding this. Therefore, I was a steward of it and I had the responsibility to keep doing it. And on top of that, it gave birth to this model of, even though I was independent, I fed the data and the charts to the Sydney Morning Herald and to all other media. And that's what multiplied the impact and the reach. So people trusted it because they could drill down into the data and see it transparently, but they could also find it because it was on the biggest platforms of the day, right? So I did that for a couple of years. My co-founder, Anthony McCarley, sorry, I told you I can talk
No, this is great.
You've got like 15 questions and you're going to get through 3 of them. My co-founder, Anthony McCarley, made another COVID data website called COVID Live. And as I like to say, I made the first and he made the best because his was amazing, right? And so we really just got swept along on this wave. And but we learned so much. That period was like a hothouse for learning about communicating about these issues that are fast moving, data driven, and what people are hungry for. People did not want the articles and with the angles, right? They didn't want screaming headlines. They just wanted the facts so that they could make decisions about themselves.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So that brings me to today, which is during that time, people said, we want this sort of information for other things. Please keep doing it, right? And we are saying, what can we learn about that model and transfer it to other areas of public interest? And we're talking about huge issues that are sort of hard to grasp, huge issues that come down to maybe changing personal behaviour to affect a collective curve when we can't see the curve and we don't know what's behind the curve, right? Yeah. This is the sort of topic that our model applies to. And that's why we said, let's come together, let's try to do this, right? And let's focus on the next big public and social issues. That's why we focus on climate right now. And let's see if also we can not just like beg for money, but we can find a way to make it sustainable. Because I believe if it's really worth having, if people really want it, then you should be able to find a way for people to pay for it. Yeah. Have I found that yet? No, but we will.
Yeah, that sounds very, very exciting. And personally, I know I have used that site that you created. I was probably on it maybe like almost daily during the pandemic because that was the kind of the source that you could have this information that is accessible and should be available to lots of people. So I think that's incredible.
Thank you.
And I also do see you have a beautiful gold pin on your shirt. So I know that you were a Walkley finalist, but you also were awarded an Australian Honours Medal for your work with covid19data.com.au. Could you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, and I should have mentioned it in the sort of origin story because, first of all, so with the Walkley Journalism Awards, the website COVID-19 Data was a finalist in the innovation category, which was fantastic. Did not win, the ABC won. But look out, ABC, we're coming after you.
Down the road.
Yeah, that's it. And then, some beautiful unknown person nominated multiple data nerds who were all voluntary for these Australian honours. And I'm not sure who it was, but Anthony got one as well. And, you know, there were so many people involved who didn't necessarily get that award, but maybe wrote referrals or something like that. Like, it was a pretty extraordinary time of people coming together to try to build these collective databases for the common good. So basically, I sort of viewed this as a currency to be used. Like, it's a huge honour, but it's also a currency, and that's why we sort of rushed into trying to get OnlyFacts going, like off the back of the King's Birthday honours last year.
Oh, okay, amazing.
Yeah.
And could you just explain to everybody what is, you know, data journalism and why is it so important?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, data journalism is considered niche, but it's not niche. It should actually be a fundamental part of every news story, you know. Data journalism, thank you for the thumbs up back there, sir. It's really this piece that says, okay, you've got a quote that says this. Have you ever read a story that says it's part of a growing trend of people that blah, blah, blah? And it's like, what's the trend? Where? Like, where do you see that, you know? So data journalism has huge potential, and I think it's been sidelined a little bit. And what you often find at the moment is that data journalism might be like big, immersive interactives with lots of bells and whistles. And we do a different type of data journalism. We do what I like to call it's like a drumbeat, right? It's not one and done. It's always up to date. It's always accessible. And the goal is ongoing communication and shedding light on this issue. And actually at the Data Arena at UTS, which is an amazing place if anyone hasn't been there, but they used the analogy as well about my COVID site that it was like a wristwatch that you can check it at any time. And so really data journalism is a possibility to convey information to people in a different way. And, you know, we were talking before the live stream started, Victoria, about how the way people consume information is changing. Data journalism can be a little bit risky because data is inherently authoritative to people, and people forget that lots of decisions went into making it. There are editorial decisions. I used to say we don't have any editorial, but that's misleading because there are editorial decisions baked into every single decision we make. We don't have opinion, right? So I think that there's a big role for data journalism because people trust data, but then we have to be able to give people context and help them understand it as well. And we have to find ways to do that in an environment where people don't want to read a 1,000-word article anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, these are all really great ideas, but with you found a kind of a need, but you actually made something out of it. Can you tell me about what enabled you to put all of this work into your startup, you know, maybe before you've been able to make lots of money from it, and like what's kind of driven you to do that?
Definitely before I've been able to make lots of money from it, thank you. I mean, the first thing is I have a pretty high appetite for risk, and that's just because of my personal background and my life, and I think that you have to have that, right? And you also have to have the capacity to take on that risk. For instance, for the last couple of years, we launched about a year, 14 months ago. So I've worked full-time on OnlyFacts, and I taught half-time at UTS, and I work for Forbes magazine as a data journalist as well. So I work like a lot, right? So first of all, you have to be able to work a lot. And if you have caring duties or something like that, which I don't have, then I don't see how it would be possible, right? I have like a safety net. I can move home if like everything falls apart, you know. We just need like absolute basic money to come in the door so that we can like feed our wonderful developer just a little, just once a day, you know, that's all he needs. and also Anthony in Melbourne. So yeah, like we're a pretty lean organization, and I think I don't, like, it's hard for sure. It's the tasks of, Sisyphean toil, just pushing the boulder up the hill. Like, but one day we hope the car will sort of start.
Yeah, amazing. And so you actually taught data journalism and entrepreneurship here at UTS.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about why entrepreneurship is important within journalism and media?
Yeah, sure. It goes to the issues that we were talking about, which is we're on the cusp of the next revolution in how people get their information, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we're not talking about infotainment, although a lot of news is infotainment in a way. Actually, on that, we were thinking maybe a good strategy would be, because everyone loves crime so much, in news and true crime podcasts.
I love true crime podcasts.
Well, one of James who works with us said, how about we get murdered and get featured on a true crime podcast?
Okay,
and then,
I can make the true crime podcast if you get murdered.
Okay, perfect.
Different side business.
Wearing an OnlyFacts t-shirt.
Yeah.
But basically, you have to be able to grapple with the way audiences are changing, right? And so you can't just be able to say, oh, well, that's over there in that bucket, right? Like ChatGPT, for instance, and AI and chat in general, right? And I'm still going to push forward and write my 600-word article because that's what I do, because then what is actually happening is the audience expectations are changing and they are leaving. And the thing is there's a lot at stake with this beyond the share price of massive media companies. Like, what is at stake is actually our society being on a common page in terms of the information that we are getting. And when we're completely fragmented, you can see the sorts of things happen. Like, for instance, people of a certain political persuasion will storm the US Capitol, right? Because they believe they are existing in a different information silo. So I believe very strongly that there's a moral imperative for journalists to be entrepreneurial and to be grappling with the changes that are being brought on the industry.
Yeah, amazing. And what do you kind of see as the future of journalism and media with that lens?
Well, I'd say that the chat, the ability to interact as a chat. Is that me?
No.
Shall I keep talking?
Yep.
I think like chat, it's such a small word, but it's such a huge shift, right? And that's going to fundamentally change people's expectations and how we're going to interact with information.
So more interactive.
Yeah. So that people, because a lot of times, this is what we found during COVID, people often have a question and they want the question to be answered, right? And so if that's what their expectation is when they come to your site, then that's what you need to help them do. And so, for instance, the Washington Post did something interesting recently where they basically they kind of gated off their content and you could interact with it to ask it climate questions, right?
Wow.
So I think that's like an obvious one that's coming.
Yeah, and they could kind of cut through, just the influx of information as well and kind of customize it a bit to them, to whatever question a person has.
Yeah, exactly. Which is risky because personalization and customization is sort of part of the problem as well. So I think that that's something that the people who take editorial on as a sort of social responsibility, we need to find ways to make sure that, number one, there's trust and that people can get information that they should have as well as the information that they want to have.
Yeah, exciting. And can you tell me a little bit about what the last year of OnlyFacts has been? I know you've said that you kind of started or launched about a year ago.
Sure.
What's that journey been like?
Sure. So we decided to focus on climate, right? Ultimately, we want to deal with public interest data in many different topics. We are focused on climate because climate is a data story at its core. And you have two numbers to start with. One is 0 and the other is 52 billion, right? And apparently the 52 billion tonnes of CO2 that we release, million tonnes that we release into the atmosphere each year is going to reach net zero by 2050, right?
Wow.
And that is going to happen through huge sectoral reform, and it's also going to happen through personal behaviour changing. Yet, I really get frustrated at how we are sort of treated like toddlers in terms of the information that we're given access to, and this is what happens with COVID, and it is happening now. If this is going to affect all of our lives, then let's see the curve, let's see what's driving it, all of the different issues. That's what we are trying to do. Now, what we've learned over the last year, it's so hard, so much harder than COVID, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like the domain is so much more complicated. It's way more established, right? So there has been a little bit of stuff where people have been like, well, we've been doing this for 20 years, so like, what do you think you have to offer? And it's also an issue where even with COVID, you know, we would present something, and then if the idea is to change behaviour for a result that we would see in 6 weeks, right, i.e. lockdowns, with climate, we're talking like decades before you see the results. So the engagement and the interest in it is obviously nowhere near as acute as COVID, where people were locked up in their houses and so on. But the key hypothesis for us is that COVID was not sui generis, that COVID was not unique. Yes, there were unique parts about it, but it was actually a universal problem that was just condensed into a shorter time frame. So that's why we think this model will work for other issues.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
So, you know, all of these things, climate and getting data into people, that's, I can see being incredibly impactful. Could you tell me, what do you think are some of the elements to your success with these projects? You know, so obviously you've had huge traction with COVID-19 data, and now you've started on this other venture. Can you tell me a little bit about, like, why do you think that this journey has been successful or not?
As you know, successful, I don't know about that. Well, actually, sometimes we talk about what is success in this in this particular project, and Lewis and I were talking about it the other day, where for instance, we're trying to get corporate data about sustainability, and our key metric is, well, what do we learn, right, about this particular product, right? So I guess we have been successful in this project in some ways, but look, I'd say the first thing is, I know it's a cliche, but it's all about the team, right? And we have this nice thing where we all have different strengths, and we respect each other and what they think about those things. So actually, just before this started, Migsy, my co-founder, was like, would you like to change this word? Like, would you prefer it to be renewable, singular, or renewables, plural, right? Because he knows that I get thingy about that.
Oh, about words and writing and everything.
Yes, I'm quite particular. And equally, he is quite particular about other things. And we were talking about a table that had to be changed the other day, and I was like, don't change it, because Migsy has opinions on how that should be, you know? So I would say that the different strengths is what makes it fruitful and also fun. And then the other thing that we really are focused on is going to where people are, right? So I know that we're talking a lot about our platform, but really that's just a little island in the ocean of the internet. And so it's really about all of the different ways that you can get people to collide with this information. Yeah.
So Juliette, can you tell me what do you think will be the future of OnlyFacts, and what do you hope to see in the next few years?
Well, I have learned that investors don't really like hearing me say this, but it's true. There is no liquidity event coming up. This is our life's work. We are never selling. We are never going public. We are just going to build the best freaking fact tank for Australia. And yeah, we're just going to keep going. You're not going to leave me, are you, Lewis? You're in for the long haul. Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. It's been so lovely chatting to you. Just before we wrap up, I just do want to ask if you had any advice that you could give to your younger self or anybody here who is interested in entrepreneurship, what would you say?
Advice. I'd say number one is get started.
Yeah.
Which is, I know that everyone says that, but I'm a big believer in build, iterate, and then get feedback, because our audience is so much smarter than us, and all ideas come from them. All of the best ideas come from them. And yeah, the other thing I would say is talk to people and read and consume a lot. I think that people can be quite narrow-minded and think that they have all of the best ideas. So I would say shut up and listen.
I love that. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So in a moment, we will be turning off the live stream for anybody who is watching online, and then we'll be handing it to our in-person Q&A. This is an amazing opportunity for anybody who is here in person to ask Juliette any questions. So if you are watching online or in future through our YouTube channel, this is a great reminder to come in here in person every Friday. We do this every single Friday. We'd love to welcome you to our UTS Confessions series. But for now, please, everybody, could you join me in thanking Juliette from OnlyFacts for talking to us?
Thank you so much.